The Revolution was over. America had won its independence. But just a few years later, armed farmers were marching on courthouses in Massachusetts, muskets in hand. The men who had fought for liberty were now rising against their own government. To George Washington, this was a nightmare, proof that the Republic might collapse from within. To Thomas Jefferson, writing from Paris, it was nothing to panic about. A little rebellion now and then is a good thing. This episode is the story of Shays Rebellion, a revolt that revealed the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation and pushed America toward writing a new constitution. In the mid-1780s, Massachusetts farmers were in trouble. They had returned from the Revolutionary War with little money, and many were buried in debt. State taxes were high, courts were seizing land, and creditors demanded payment in hard currency, gold and silver that few ordinary people had. For farmers, losing your land didn't just mean financial ruin. It meant losing your independence, dignity, and in some cases, even the right to vote. To men who had fought for liberty, it felt like betrayal. Out of this frustration, groups of farmers began to organize. One of their leaders was Daniel Shays, a veteran of the Continental Army. He and others argued that if courts kept seizing farms, the people had no choice but to shut the courts down. In 1786, crowds of angry farmers started blocking courthouses across Massachusetts to stop judges from hearing foreclosure cases. Their message was blunt: no courts, no foreclosures. Local officials were rattled. Was this democracy in action, or mob rule spiraling out of control? The protests grew bolder. In January of 1787, a group of nearly 1,200 rebels marched on the federal arsenal at Springfield, hoping to seize weapons. They were met by a state militia funded not by Congress, but by wealthy merchants who feared the rebellion would destroy property and credit. The clash was quick and bloody. Shots were fired. Several rebels were killed, dozens wounded, and the rest scattered. Within weeks, the rebellion had collapsed. Leaders were arrested, and Shays himself fled the state. The rebellion had failed on the ground, but its shockwaves spread across the nation. Under the Articles of Confederation, Congress had no money and no army. It had watched the crisis unfold from the sidelines, powerless to help Massachusetts. To many leaders, that was the real danger. If just a few thousand debt-ridden farmers could throw a state into chaos, what would happen if Britain or Spain tested America's weakness? Washington was deeply shaken. He warned that without stronger government, the nation risks sliding into anarchy. Jefferson, by contrast, wrote from Paris that the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. He believed occasional uprisings were natural in a free society. But for most American elites, Shays' Rebellion was not refreshing, it was terrifying. It convinced them that liberty without order was no liberty at all. In practical terms, Shays' Rebellion was small. It involved a few thousand farmers, lasted only a few months, and was quickly suppressed. But politically, its impact was huge. It became a symbol of everything wrong with the Articles of Confederation. A central government with no power to raise revenue, no standing army to respond to emergencies, no authority to help states in crisis. When delegates gathered in Philadelphia in May of 1787, Shays' Rebellion was still fresh in their minds. It was Exhibit A for why America needed a stronger union, one capable of keeping both foreign enemies and domestic unrest in check. Shays' Rebellion wasn't just a farmers' protest, it was a warning. It showed how quickly liberty could dissolve into chaos if a republic had no structure to defend it. The men who wrote the Constitution never forgot it. They believed a government must be strong enough to keep order, yet limited enough to protect freedom. Striking that balance was the work of the Constitutional Convention, and that's where our story goes next.